So which should we pay more attention to? The political moves against Hong Kong, or is it the economic news? Because they're also going to be spending an additional 150 plus billion to stimulate their economy in China.
Yeah, I would almost ignore the economic news. The Hong Kong stuff is really interesting. It's quite tragic because this is the end of one country, two systems if they proceed. So the Hong Kong news is a big deal. It'll be a big deal for Hong Kong, for U.S.-China relations. The economic news, look, here's what they're going to say. We're going to do enough to carry on. We're going to build enough to make sure people are employed. We're going to provide enough capital that things keep going. But these are announcements made to calm investors. They're not, insights into the way the policy is going to roll out. They're not meaningful. So I would for the most part, ignore the economic news and just see what they're talking about politically, because this will give more of an insight into Xi's particular mindset.
Leland, let's talk about the political side of things then. Why exactly is China doing this right now? Is it as simple as the world is distracted because of the pandemic, or are they looking ahead potentially to June and July to some key anniversaries where we've seen the protests flare up?
So so there's a little bit of both of those. There's also legislative council elections in September that Beijing will do very poorly in if they continue under the current course. So right now, I think that the mindset of Beijing on Hong Kong is that things are not going well. We've got some very sensitive anniversaries coming up. We've got some elections in September, which will be very damaging to our cause. Let's get all 23 sedition laws into place, so we're going to have the firepower to be able to affect things on the ground. Because quite frankly, if they continue to rely on Hong Kong's politicians to push this, they're not going to be able to do it. This has to come from Beijing and be pushed straight down. So there is a very small window where Beijing can act right now, and I think that they're moving on it.
Leland, I'm wondering what you think these tensions mean from an economic standpoint, specifically as it relates to U.S.-listed Chinese companies. There's been talk for some time about potential of delisting these companies. We saw the Senate move on legislation this week. How much teeth do you think that has? And are we really looking at the possibility of an Alibaba or a Baidu just saying, we're just going to move over to Hong Kong or the mainland list?
Yeah, a company like Alibaba or Baidu may have that wiggle room. Most Chinese companies won't. But before we go too much into this being this delisting Chinese companies action sounding very provocative, all this is doing is really standardizing the compliance rules for all companies. So it just makes it necessary for Chinese to adhere to the same rules, including audits, that U.S. companies have to right now. So this is not something targeting Chinese companies. It's not something delisting Chinese companies. It's merely something that is creating a fair standard of play across the entire investment universe. And keep in mind, even if this does click in, you've got 3 straight years you need to have non-compliance in this before a company gets kicked off. So nothing is going to happen in the short term. I applaud the move, but this is not something that's a big deal, in the here and now.
Leland, Rick Newman here. Are you expecting more violence and more bloodshed in Hong Kong? And do you think if so, it would be worse than what we've seen recently?
I would think so, but I think that once these moves are formalized by Beijing, they have to go in with a lot more force than they have before, because once they move forward, they can't move back. So I do fear much more violence. I also fear a much stronger reaction by the Chinese, and there's just no way that there's going to be a strong enough resistance to carry on indefinitely on this. So yeah, I am expecting more violence. I think that the situation in Hong Kong is getting very scary, and again, it's a tragedy playing out right now.
For those of us who are, for lack of a better term, Cold War relics, grew up during the Cold War, any concern, I asked this in the last hour, about China trying to flex its muscles, the peaceful reconciliation with Taiwan, that might be not so peaceful, that they might make a move?
For years, the answer has been no, they know the time's not right. But look, this is a very difficult time for Xi. He had a trade war. He had the difficulties in Hong Kong. He's had COVID-19 to deal with. There's a very slowing economy, a world reaction against him. So there's a lot of clamoring right now domestically to do something about Taiwan, particularly because Tsai Ing-wen was just reinaugurated, and you see what they call a pro-independence administration continuing to govern Taiwan. So it's a very dangerous move for them to consider. But part of the danger here for the United States is we don't have a clear message on this to the Chinese. In the past, we've had the Taiwan Relations Act, which is purposely ambiguous, and every president has said, look, we'll come to Taiwan's aid, or at least implied that. We haven't really seen President Trump talk about this. So there may be just enough ambiguity to get this situation a bit messier going forward. It's critical to clear this ambiguity up before China makes a move that'll drag everyone into something we don't want to see.
Leland, what's the end game here? I mean, is this, really just China looking to make Hong Kong more or less part of the mainland?
Yeah, well, they're watching this one country, two systems not work out the way they wanted, which is one country, two systems. They want to see a political apparatus that answers to Beijing, and with all the pushback right now, that's not what the consensus in Hong Kong is to do. So I think before they see the wrong message sent to Taiwan, they're going to want to crack down on Hong Kong, but. Look, this is a combination of bad domestic politics, a bad situation in Hong Kong, Xi Jinping looking very bad because of the number of factors that I mentioned earlier. There's the need to rally around the flag. So the timing is actually pushing the Chinese into this, as well as the particular situation in Hong Kong right now.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.